You know, people are actually very strong. And the truth is, if you face difficult things head on, you find out that you can handle much more than you thought. You really can, and you can go through it without losing your character. She actually got better almost completely, and that was mostly because of her own strength. She figured out what was wrong, and then she did what she had to do to fix it. To me, that's nothing less than a miracle. Anyway, part of the story about the cat starts with me talking about our dog. He passed away about a year ago, but in the book, he's still alive. I mention that to readers because people who love dogs feel strongly about them. And if you say you like cats, sometimes dog lovers think that means you don't like dogs, and they might get upset with you. So at the start of the chapter, I say clearly that it's okay to pet a dog on the street too. You don't have to be angry about it. The point is this: when you're in pain, you need to stay awake to the beauty that still exists in life, especially the kind that surprises you. That's what I was trying to show with the idea of the cat. There's a Siamese cat named Ginger who lives across the street from us. Cats, by the way, aren't really fully tamed, they're technically still wild. But for some strange reason, they seem to like humans. No one really knows why, but they do. Ginger used to come over, and our dog would watch her. They were kind of friends. She'd roll on her back, and our dog, Sigil, would nudge her a little with his nose. Sometimes she'd walk over and let you pet her if she was in the mood that day. You have to keep your eyes open for those tiny moments of light in the middle of darkness. When things are tough, you need to notice where life is still beautiful, where there's still something that gives you strength. You make your time smaller moment to moment and feel thankful for even little things. That kind of thinking can help you get through the worst times. And maybe, if you're lucky, you'll come out the other side okay. But even if you don't, maybe it will only be tragic, not total hell. And that makes a big difference. In the worst times, you can still shape things so they're just tragic, not complete suffering. And that space between tragedy and pure hell, it's huge. There's nothing more painful than being at someone's deathbed and watching the people around them fighting with each other. The death alone is already hard enough, but it can be turned into something much worse, something no one can bear. And I believe, and this is sort of how I close the book, if we all stopped making bad things even worse, maybe we'd be able to live with the difficult parts of life. Maybe then we could also improve the world bit by bit. That's really what we should be doing. It's what we could do too, because honestly, there's nothing more meaningful to do. And that's the core of what this book 12 Rules for Life is all about. Every time you learn something, it's because something didn't work out. That moment shows you the part of the world you don't understand yet. And every time you see that part, you get a chance to rebuild how you look at life. That's why realizing you're wrong can sometimes be more important than proving you're right. One important thing you're supposed to learn in university is that it's helpful to listen to people who annoy you. Why? Because maybe, just maybe, they know something useful. And if they tell you, and you actually hear it, you might use it to grow instead of falling apart. Talking only to people who agree it'll make your hair stand on end, it's no accident that the key figure in Western thinking is someone who was wrongly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, exactly. So what do you do with that? Well, I've thought about that for a long time too. And it's like, well, don't join a damn crowd, because all that does is give you a way to be as awful as possible and not suffer any of the consequences. That's not a good plan, so maybe we don't go that route. Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your pain and carry it and try to be decent so you don't make things worse. Well, that's real, you know. I've read a lot about the horrible things people have done to each other, and you can't even picture it. It's that terrible. So you don't want to turn into someone like that, right? Do you have a reason to be bitter? Yes, you've got lots of reasons. Everyone does. God, there's so many reasons to hate being alive. Everyone you care about is going to die. You will too. And along the way, there's going to be plenty of hurt. And a lot of it won't even be fair. So yeah, of course you're bitter. Now go ahead and act that out and watch what happens. You make all the things you're already mad about even worse. There's an idea that hell has no bottom. And that's because no matter how awful things are, some messed up person like you can always find a way to make it even more terrible. So then what do you do with that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is. Life is pain. That's what religion has always said. Life is pain. Yeah. Well, who wants to say that out loud? But think about it. So what do you do when faced with that kind of pain? Try to make it less. Start with yourself. How useful are you? Fix yourself for God's sake, so that when your dad dies, You're not crying in the corner, and you can help plan the funeral and stand up straight so others can lean on you. That's better. Don't just act like a helpless victim. Of course, you're a victim, Jesus, obviously, but fix yourself, and maybe when you do that, you'll know how to do it, because deep down you already know what's wrong with you. If you'll just be honest, there's a few areas you could clean up, and maybe you can handle that even in your messed up condition. And if you do, then you might improve just a bit, and then your eyes might open a bit more, and then you clean yourself up a little more. And maybe then you bring your family together instead of having them stay this angry, confused, broken mess that you're stuck spending holidays with. So you fix yourself just a bit with some humility, because man, you are a serious work in progress. And then you wonder, well, can I even make peace with my dumb brother? And probably not, because he's just as messed up as you are. So how are you going to manage that? And maybe you slowly get somewhere with that. And maybe your family starts to function again. And then you notice, well, that took away some pain, even though it also took away chances for petty revenge, and that's a bit of a drag. So then you get your family together a bit more, and you've learned something because you've done something actually tough, and now you're wiser. And maybe then you reach a bit outside the family and try to fix something small without messing it up completely, because our world is complicated, and we tell students they can just fix it all. It's like try fixing a military helicopter and see how far you get with that. It's like you're a chimp with a hammer. Whack, hey, look, it's better. No, it's not. Things are complex, and fixing them is really hard, and you need to be a rare kind of tool to do it, and you're not. And that's the other big message in the West. How do you get past the pain in life? And I'm not saying it only comes from the West. How do you get past the pain of life? You become a better human being. That's how. Well, that's tough. That means responsibility. And I think if you ask someone, do you want your life to have meaning? Everything you do would matter. That's what a meaningful life is. But if everything you do matters, you have to carry that weight. Or you can say forget meaning, then nothing matters, and you don't have to carry anything, because who cares? And then you just float through life doing whatever feels good. How useful do you think that'll be? And now you're stuck in a life with no meaning. But at least you don't have any responsibility. Which one do you really want? Well, ask yourself, which one are you chasing? And you'll find pretty quickly it's not the biggest part of your soul chasing meaning, because look at what you'd have to face to do that. You'd have to accept that life is full of pain and still get yourself in order. That's hard, man. It's crazy that people even manage to do it. I'm shocked every day when I go outside and the world isn't on fire, because really God talked to people. I knew this guy got into a motorcycle accident and it wrecked him. He was a power linesman working outside, and he worked with a guy who had Parkinson's disease, and the two of them together could do the work of one person because their weaknesses filled in for each other, and they were out there fixing lines in freezing weather, one of them crushed by a bike accident, the other shaking from Parkinson's. And that's how this world runs. It's full of people who are damaged in ways you can't even picture. And yet they go out and do hard work they don't even like, and look, the power is still on, man. It's amazing. It's a miracle. And we're so ungrateful. College students, postmodern types, they have no clue. They're surrounded by miracle after miracle. It's a miracle. This stuff even functions, and all us confused chimps who don't even know each other can sit in a room for hours sweating without tearing each other apart, because that's what chimps do. So anyway, what happened? I made some videos, and I got to the bottom of some things, at least as far as I could go. So I told you what that bottom looked like, and then I got an idea of what you might do with it, which isn't my idea. It's not something I invented. It's ancient. It's way older than Christianity. It's the oldest story humans ever told. Get yourself sorted out, rise above your pain, try to be a kind of hero, make the pain in the world smaller. That's the path forward as far as I can tell. If there's any way forward, the last rule, it's called pet a cat when you meet one on the street, and it's a very personal part of the book. It's a lot about my daughter, and she was very sick when she was younger, but especially when she was a teenager, she had a really rough time. She got juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And between age 14 and 16, it first destroyed her hip, so it had to be replaced. Then it destroyed the ankle on her other foot, and that had to be replaced too. And she walked around for 2 years on broken legs, and she was on huge doses of pain meds and could barely stay awake. And she had this advanced autoimmune disease with all kinds of other symptoms, just as bad as the joint issues, but harder to describe. And it was just totally brutal. And as a test of your faith, there is almost nothing worse than a terrible sickness in an innocent child, right? And so the chapter talks about that, and also about what to do when you're in a situation like that, because everyone in some way is going to go through something like this at some point. You'll be faced with sickness, either your own or someone you love, or with some kind of serious crisis. So, what this becomes is a real, useful way to deal with those kinds of things. One of the first things people do when they're hit with a serious crisis is they make their time frame smaller. You know, sometimes you just can't think about next month, and maybe you can't even manage to think about next week, or even tomorrow, because right now everything feels too heavy. All you can handle is the moment right in front of you. That's all there is, and that's okay. You shrink your time frame until you can deal with it. If you can't face next week, then face the next day. And if the next day feels too much, then deal with the next hour. And if even that's too much, then just face the next minute. The real question inside is, how do you face pain, loss, and evil? You might say, I'm not ready. And that's fair. It's not surprising, especially if you were overly protected as a child. It's actually not good to protect kids too much. No matter what you do, the snakes will still show up in the garden. So instead of trying to stop all the snakes from getting in, what you do is give your child something, a kind of mental sword, that helps them cut those snakes to pieces and use them to shape the world. The secret to human success in a world of suffering and cruelty isn't safety, it's strength. It's a totally different way of thinking. We know this through psychology too. For example, if someone has agoraphobia, which is basically fear of open spaces or unfamiliar places, or really just fear of the unknown, you don't help them by making them less scared, you help them become braver. It's not the same thing. A person with agoraphobia often never thought about death or pain. They were kept away from those thoughts. They were naive. Their minds never really imagined those things because they were protected. But then something happens. This especially hits women in their 40s, who are more likely to develop agoraphobia. They might have had an overprotective dad, then an overprotective boyfriend, then an overprotective husband. And they may have accepted all that protection because it kept them safe. That's the trade. They stay dependent and maybe even weak because it ensures that someone keeps protecting them. But the price is they don't learn how to handle hard things themselves. Then something happens. Maybe it's menopause and their heart starts beating weirdly. They get heart palpitations and think, oh no, I'm dying. But who do they go to about that? No authority figure can protect them from their own body. Or maybe a friend goes through a divorce. Maybe a sister passes away. And suddenly death, fear, and the darker side of life show up. And there's no easy way to hide from it anymore. So now they start having panic attacks. They go out, they feel their heart beating weird, and they think, I'm going to die. And right after that, they think, not only am I going to die, but I'll embarrass myself doing it. So now they're hit with two fears, death and judgment from others. That combination sends their body into complete panic. It's like their fight or flight system goes out of control. It's horrible. So they start avoiding the places where they've had panic attacks. Then they avoid more places. And eventually they can't go anywhere. The monster has returned, and they feel like a tiny, helpless person. What can you do then? You can't just say there's no monster. It's too late. The person has already met the truth of fear and death. They've already faced chaos. There's no going back. You can't tell them the world is safe. It's not. It never really was. If you thought it was safe, it's because you were living inside a kind of invisible bubble, one handed to you by your culture and the people around you. That illusion has now been broken, so now what? Some people shut down completely. They stay inside, can't go out, frozen in fear. Their life becomes miserable. The better way is to slowly face what they're afraid of. You break it down, you expose them little by little to the things that scare them, but in a planned and careful way, and what they start to learn is that they're stronger than they thought. They didn't know it before. And maybe, just maybe, they didn't want to know, because the truth is, people often play a role in their own fear. When they had a choice, go out and face the world or stay home and avoid it, they often chose to stay safe. Not always because of protection from others, but because they didn't want to feel the fear. Maybe as a kid, they had trouble on the playground. Deep down, they knew they should handle it themselves. But instead, they ran to their mom and got her to step in, and they knew even then that it wasn't quite right, that they were avoiding something they needed to face, but it was easier, so that's what they did. They kept running back to the people who protected them, hiding behind the great father figure, so to speak. But the problem with always hiding is that you don't grow. You don't learn to stand up on your own. So now at 40, you have to learn it the hard way, and that's painful. So the process goes like this. You ask the person, what are you scared of? Let's make a list. Rank them from least scary to most scary. Let's say they're scared of elevators. Okay, we'll start there. First, just look at a picture of an elevator. Then imagine being in one. Then stand near one and watch the doors open and close. Because to their mind, those doors aren't just doors. They're the gates of doom. That's how they see it inside. So you get them to stand as close as they can without having a panic attack. And you do that again, and again, and again. They shake, they sweat, they're terrified, but they survive. And after about 10 times, they calm down. Now they know, I didn't die. But more importantly, they realize, I could take it. I can face death, at least the feeling of it, and not break. Then they get a little closer, and a little more, and finally they're standing inside what used to be a tomb, but now is just an elevator again. They've taken it back. They've taken themselves back. Something else happens too. I've seen this over and over. People who go through this kind of training, the kind that builds toughness, they often start standing up for themselves in ways they never did before. Why? Because before they couldn't. They needed to stay protected. They couldn't afford to push back against the people protecting them, even if those people were overbearing. Because if they did, they risked losing that safety net. So they stayed quiet. They didn't speak up. And you especially see this with men, full, grown men 30, 40 years old, still terrified of what their father might think. Why? Because deep down, they're still looking for their father's approval. They're still afraid of losing that connection. Even if they disagree, they stay quiet because they feel they still need that shield. To believe that there's someone out there who knows what's right makes it easier to accept being controlled, because then you don't have to face the truth that maybe no one actually knows what's right. Not even your father, even if he's the judge. That's the comfort in thinking someone else has the answers. But what if they don't? What if nobody really knows better than you do? That's a tough truth. You don't fully step into adulthood until you face that. That's actually what becoming an adult means, realizing that no one else knows exactly what you should do more than you do. And that truth is terrifying because you ask yourself, what do I really know? Not much, maybe, and people often choose spiritual slavery to some bigger authority. All at the Great Father over that kind of deep responsibility. It makes sense, but the real problem with that is this. There's more inside you than you think. And if you always hide behind someone else's judgment or power, you'll never get to see that depth in yourself. You might have the strength to handle life's hardest parts, even death, without breaking down. Maybe you can even face evil without falling apart. Who knows? It's possible, and this isn't just a thought. It's exactly what therapy is about. That's always the big question being asked in therapy. Can you handle it? And the answer, surprisingly often, is yes. People are much tougher than they realize. Just look around. People working in emergency rooms, in cancer wards, in hospices. People handling the aftermath of crime and trauma. They deal with dark things every day, and some of them do it without falling apart. That doesn't mean it's easy. You can see awful things, things you'll carry with you forever, but people still do those jobs. And some do them with dignity. That tells you something powerful about human resilience. Now it's true. You're under pressure. You're being crushed in ways you didn't choose. Maybe you're short. Maybe you don't look like a model. Maybe your great-grandparents were poor and powerless. Maybe you're not that smart, or you've got a sick family member, or your own health is failing. You're a mess, and that's not even all. You're oppressed by your past, your biology, and the weight of all history. You carry all that, plus your own flaws. It's all true, but here's where it gets tricky. If we go down the road of naming every way someone is oppressed, we end up having to break it all down. Are you a woman? Are you a black woman? Are you a black woman with 2 kids, and one child has health problems? What if you're a Hispanic woman whose son is brilliant but can't afford school, and your husband drinks and beats you, and getting citizenship nearly destroyed you? That all sucks, no doubt, so now what? Do we try to solve all that? Do we fix every person's specific problems down to every last detail? We can't, that's the truth. You can't even list all your own burdens, let alone weigh them properly. And who would even decide whose pain matters more? That's the core issue. Who decides? In the West, our solution was to stop trying to fix everything top down. Instead, we put that weight into the market. We say, okay, here's what I can offer. Here's what I want. I bring my pain, my problems, my past, and I try to give you something useful. And you do the same with yours. And together we trade. That system. It's not perfect. In fact, it's a bad system. But compared to every other one we've tried, it's the best we've got. That's why even 10% of the world gets to be free. There's something deeply logical under that chaos. So we come to this powerful idea, the individual. The West figured that out. And yes, people get upset when religious themes come up, but mythology has always carried these truths. It's not an accident that in Western culture, the ideal individual is someone who was unfairly punished and tortured. That matters, so what do we do about that image? I've thought about this for years. What you don't do is form a mob that just lets you act out your worst self without suffering the cost. That's a mistake. That's what we have to avoid. Instead, we face the truth, carry your suffering, try to be a decent person so you don't make it worse. That's real. I've read about horrible things people have done to each other, things you can't even imagine. You don't want to become someone like that, but you have reasons to be bitter. Everyone does. Your life hurts, people die, bad things happen that aren't fair. Of course you feel angry, but leave out that anger and you'll make everything worse. Much worse, that's hell. No bottom because it can always get worse. Even when it's already bad, someone like you can still figure out a way to drag it deeper. So what do? You accept it. Life is pain. Always has been. Religious people have said that forever. Life is suffering, and who wants to admit that? But look closely, it's true. So what should you do about all that pain? Reduce it. Start with yourself. Be useful, get your act together so that when your father dies, you don't break down. You help, you stand up, you help with the funeral, you become the person others can lean on. That's better than being weak. Don't play the victim card. Of course you're a victim. We all are, but that can't be your identity. Get yourself sorted out. You already know what's wrong with you. Admit it. There are things you could improve even in your current state. You could tidy yourself up a bit. That might help you see more clearly. Then maybe you improve a little more. Maybe you help your family stop fighting all the time. Maybe they don't spend every Christmas in passive-aggressive battles. You try to be humble because, let's be honest, you're a mess. And then you try to make peace with your brother. But he's a fool, and so are you, so good luck with that. Still, maybe you make progress. And slowly, bit by bit, that's the path. You start trying to make your family work better, and you notice that doing that eases some pain, even though it cuts down on chances to get petty revenge, which can feel annoying. But you do it anyway. You pull your family closer, and now you understand a bit more because you took on something truly hard. You've learned something real. Then maybe you try to reach beyond the family, make a small improvement somewhere without messing it all up. But our world is complicated, and we teach students that they can just go and fix things. It's like handing them a military helicopter and saying, go fix it. See how that works out. You're like a monkey with a wrench. You hit something, boom, you think you made it better. But no, it's probably worse. These things are complicated. Fixing anything is really difficult. You have to be precise, skilled. You have to be like this perfect tool. And you're not? That's one message from the West, though not only from the West. How do you deal with all the pain in life? By becoming a better person. That's how, but it's tough. It takes real responsibility. If you ask someone, do you want to live a life that matters? You're really asking, are you ready to let every single thing you do be important? That's what meaning means. Everything you do counts. You have to carry that weight, or you can drop it and say, forget it. Who cares about meaning? Then sure, you don't have to carry the responsibility anymore. No one cares what you do. You can just wander through life chasing every little thing you feel like chasing. But where does that leave you? Stuck, empty. You might not have any weight to carry, but now you don't know why you're even here. Which road are you walking? Ask yourself. You'll probably realize not all of you is chasing meaning. Because going down that road means admitting life is full of pain. You have to stand up tall in front of that fact. That's no joke. It's amazing anyone does it. Every day I walk outside and think, why isn't everything just on fire? Because it could be. I knew this guy who had a motorcycle crash that wrecked his body. He worked on power lines. His partner on the job had Parkinson's. Each one had physical problems the other didn't. So together, they made one full worker. Out there in the freezing cold fixing broken lines, that's how things run in our world. So many people are hurt in ways you can't even imagine, and still they get up. They do jobs they don't even like. And look, the power's on. That's a miracle. That's unbelievable, and yet we're so ungrateful. College students, the ones into postmodern ideas, they don't get it. They're so ungrateful. They don't see they live in a miracle. The fact that all of this works, that people who don't know each other can sit in a room, not tear each other apart, that's crazy. Chimps can't do that. So what happened? I made some videos. I dug deep as I could, and I shared what I found. And then I thought about what people could actually do about it. And look, it's not my idea. It's a really old idea, older than Christianity. Maybe the oldest idea humans have. Get your act together. Rise above the pain. Try to be a hero. Make the world hurt a little less. That's the best way forward I know. Maybe the only way. When I was about 25, I was in rough shape. I weighed around 138 pounds, smoked a pack a day. Drank way too much. I was from a tough little town way up in northern Alberta called Fairview. Winters were long and cold. Most of my friends were heavy drinkers. A lot of them dropped out of school before they don't want to be poor or struggling with money when you're 70. So I really can't understand what's going on with universities these days. I can't believe students aren't told right on their first day, look, you're here for something big. You're here to learn how to express yourself better than you ever thought possible. When you leave, you'll be unstoppable. You'll be able to do anything you set your mind to. That's the real reason you're here. But instead, you're told the world is an unfair place and you're probably stuck at the bottom. And there's almost nothing you can do except maybe try to take down the patriarchy. It's just so weak, and honestly, it's sad that universities are pushing that message. They should feel ashamed that this is what they're offering students. I feel embarrassed for them. I've even said in public that parents should think about sending their sons to trade school, because at least they'll pick up practical skills there. And that's a hard thing for me to say because I really believe that getting a top-level education and learning how to speak and think well is one of the best things anyone can do, not just for themselves, but for the whole world. So why have the universities lost sight of this? Well, it's because of this postmodern neo-Marxist stuff. That kind of thinking is full of bitterness, ideas about being oppressed, and being stuck in a group identity. It's just a mess. A lot of students here probably agree that college, especially a place like Harvard, is supposed to help you learn how to express yourself, read deeply, and think clearly. But after that, especially at Harvard, there's also this big question: what's a good life? What do we do with the skills we gain here after we graduate? The answer is help reduce suffering. That's your mission. You ask what to do after you graduate. Well, if you come out of here able to express yourself and be strong, people will be lining up to give you opportunities. You won't be able to keep up with them all. I've worked with some very skilled people in all kinds of fields in my life, really top performers, and let me tell you something about them. They're not selfish. They're not greedy. One of the things they enjoy the most is finding other talented people and opening doors for them as fast as they can. They actually love doing that. There's not much in life that's more meaningful than helping someone else shine. It feels good to say, here's your chance, go for it. And then to watch that person go out there and succeed. These top performers don't try to keep all the good things for themselves. That's just not true. So you don't have to worry too much about your future if you become even half of what you could be. The world is always in need of people who can think clearly and speak powerfully. And if you say, no one will want me, well, if you've already figured out who you are and what you can do, people will notice. They'll offer you the world. Just take it. It's yours if you've earned it. That's what people want. That's what your parents want. It's what you want, even if you don't always realize it. It's also what people want in relationships. Men want women who are becoming who they could be. Women want men who are stepping into their full potential. And one of the greatest strengths of human beings is our ability to speak well. That's our most powerful tool. Nothing else even comes close. So if you don't believe in that power, especially as students at Harvard, then your priorities are seriously off. You're already in a position of huge advantage. So make yourself into someone who deserves that. Use it. Get out there and make things better. That's what the world needs. There are so many problems that need fixing. What you should do is take on so much responsibility that it almost feels like too much to handle. Then you'll grow stronger trying to carry that weight. And you won't be asking, what should I do with my life? Or what's the meaning of life? Because it will be obvious. At the very least, you can say, there's too much suffering in the world, and I might be able to help fix that. And you can help, so go do something. If you do, there will be less suffering in the world. And when you're 80, you'll look back and say, the world is a little better because I lived. You don't need to believe in destiny or even believe in God to see that as something good. I think there's more things get worse, and we don't really know how much better they could get just because of that. So there's this strange situation that's part of the human condition involving human weakness, social judgment, both of which are major reasons for suffering, and people not taking on the responsibility they deep down know they should. That's also something interesting, and another thing I've often asked my undergraduate students is, there's this idea that people have a conscience. You know what the conscience is. It's like this feeling or voice in your head just before you do something you know is dumb, and it tells you maybe you shouldn't do that dumb thing. You don't have to listen to it, oddly enough, but you often go ahead and do it anyway. And then, of course, exactly what the conscience told you would happen ends up happening. So you feel even more foolish about it than if it had just happened by chance, because you knew this would happen. You got warned it would happen, and you still went and did it. And the strange thing is that this conscience works inside people, and we really don't understand what it is exactly. So you might ask, what would happen if you actually followed your conscience for 5 years, or maybe 10? What kind of situation might you be in? What kind of family might you have built? What sort of relationship might you have managed to create? And you can be sure that a relationship based on who you really are will be way stronger and more stable than one built on some fake version of you. Now, of course, that means the person you're with has to handle the full version of you, your strengths and your mess, and that's a tough thing to deal with. But if you handle it well, at least you have something real. You have a place to stand and something solid to live in. You have a real life, and that's a good foundation to raise children in, for example, because then you can have an actual relationship with your kids instead of driving them crazy, which sadly happens in a very large number of families. But it's more than just that, and this is where I'll wrap it up and explain why I wanted to bring up social networks and how they relate to all of this. See, it's not just your own life that's affected by whether or not you get your act together. It's not just about how seriously you choose to live out your real self. It's also about everyone connected to you. And you might think, well, there are about 7 billion people on the planet, and it'll go up to 9 billion and then drop quickly. And who am I? Just one small person among all those billions, so it doesn't matter what I do or don't do. But that's totally the wrong way to think about it. It's the wrong picture, because you're at the middle of a web. You're a connection point in a network, and that's even more true now with social media. You'll know at least 1,000 people over your lifetime, and each of them will know 1,000 more. That makes you just one step away from 1 million people and 2 steps from 1 billion. That's how closely tied in you are, and your actions are like dropping a stone into water. The ripples spread out and affect things in ways you can't fully see. That means what you do and what you don't do is way more important than you think. If you act like it doesn't matter, that's a terrifying idea, because suddenly it does matter. You might say, well, that's